Good morning, everyone. This is your weather briefing for day 2 of the Verve Cup Offshore Regatta, Saturday, August 11th. This forecast is brought to you by Nauticon, and I'm meteorologist Chris Bedford. Well, we had a better day than expected out there yesterday. Kind of lucked out a little bit with a stronger gradient component that held most of the day. We'd like to think that that would be the case today, but unfortunately, it looks like, although we'll start out with some reasonable breeze this morning, it looks like the breeze will fade as the day goes on as it tries to go into a very weak lake breeze. Right now, not expecting any hazardous weather conditions out there, but always keep an eye to the sky. And if things don't look right, make sure you're checking for the official forecasts and warnings in case conditions have changed. The official thunderstorm severe weather outlook shows no severe weather around the Great Lakes. There is an area of general thunderstorms indicated across the Great Lakes. Realistically, though, I'm not expecting anything in the Chicago area. There is a trough that is making its way southeast across Michigan, so there'll be some stuff out there. But right now, I'm expecting things to remain quiet around Chicago. The forecast outlook for tomorrow shows all that activity moved out to the east and continued fair weather conditions around Chicago. This morning's weather map shows that frontal system that passed through Chicago early yesterday morning is now across southern Indiana. There's a wave of low pressure. There's actually been a series of these low pressure waves on this front. In fact, I believe one of them yesterday was in part responsible for keeping that northeast gradient going a bit stronger than what was forecast. But the front's moved further to the south now, and our influences from it are reduced as a result. Our main weather feature for the wind today is this high pressure, which we've been talking about out over Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin area. That is going to gradually extend to the east a little bit today. In fact, we could find what's called a meso high, or a little microscale high pressure developing over the southern part of the lake this afternoon. That would further ease our winds, I believe. Right now, the satellite picture looks pretty good, pretty clear around Chicago. Not much happening there. This is that trough that I mentioned passing through out of the upper peninsula of Michigan into northern lower peninsula. That's going to continue moving to the southeast. There is some rain activity associated with that, but I think that all stays well out to the east of us today and should not be a concern. We do have nice clear conditions, which should allow for some heating. The air mass itself is fairly cool, so I think or mild, I should say. The temperatures will probably get up to around 80 for our maximums today. That's a bit tricky because the lake is actually relatively warm, so we have lake temperatures, in the low, perhaps even up into the mid 70s here, and we're only expecting 80 for high in Chicago. So the actual thermal component, that is the part of that drives the lake breeze, where we normally have colder water offshore, warmer land inshore, so we get an onshore flow. While that will happen today, the temperature difference doesn't look like it's going to be all that great. So indeed, I think that might take some knots off of our lake breeze potential today. Here's the forecast for midday. You can see that high still sitting out to the west, but kind of extending towards Chicago a little bit. And there it is this evening, actually starting to weaken somewhat with time. So we have the wind field forecast here. It's a close-up view. You can see the race areas look indicated to the north, and blue, red, and white. Winds generally are expected to be sort of from the north this morning, a little bit of an offshore component close to shore because of slight drainage effects. That'll wane pretty quickly though, as once the sun is up. And what we're showing here basically is what's left of the gradient flow in the morning. So actually not too bad to start with, probably around sort of an average of 10 knots, but as low as 7, maybe puffing up to 13 briefly. But as the day goes on and the land starts to heat up, the wind will start to veer to the right, and that actually corresponds with a decrease in our winds. So we see that happening here, 1 o'clock, much lighter winds developing out over the lake where the air is diverging out to flow into the shore as a bit of a lake breeze. Uh, but getting quite light, and that process continues through the afternoon, the wind trending even more to the right and continuing to be quite light. A little bit stronger over the land where we get a little bit better mixing out over the water. This is where the air is diverging into the shore, and so it stays quite light there. So pretty soft conditions, kind of patchy, I think, in the afternoon. Marginally saleable. Right now, I'm kind of optimistic that we'll actually do a little bit better than what's shown here, but it could be a tricky day out there with very light winds. Looking for at the forecast detail, we see the north component dominant this morning. The wind's a little bit stronger. Like I said, we actually may puff up a little bit higher than this 10 knots shown at times, but it won't hold. Once the wind starts to veer more to the right, we see it start to drop in pressure. It gets quite light here in the early to mid-afternoon period, and once it gets around to more of an east-northeast direction, then maybe we'll get a little bit of recovery with the thermal component, but again, we're not talking much in terms of pressure. Tomorrow's weather map shows a little bit of a change. We've got, from the previous forecast, we've got a bit stronger high pressure over northern Michigan. What that's going to do, I think, is drive a little bit stronger northeast gradient flow across the lake. That gets backed around more north-northeast here at Chicago, and that actually will give us a bit better breeze than what was in the forecast previously. So by tomorrow morning we see that northeast wind, which is backing, so it's more right shifted out in the middle part of the lake, and then when it gets to the shoreline it backs a little bit more northeast, sitting probably around a 10 knot average, and that holds more or less through early afternoon. Maybe a little bit drop in pressure because at this point we are starting to get a little bit of a lake breeze effect. It's not like it's going to go totally into lake breeze, but that will take some knots off the breeze a little bit in the afternoon. And then here by once we past peak heating, the wind actually goes more gradient dominant in the mid-afternoon, and so the wind backs left again and starts to build. So we see that in the forecast detail here. At first we may actually have a little bit of a drainage or land breeze in the early hours. That won't last for long. Once the land heats up, it'll pull that gradient in from offshore, and we see that gets up sort of into the 8 to 13 knot range. It does soften a little bit here in the early afternoon due to some minor thermal effects, and then picks up again in the latter part of the afternoon. So pretty light today. Tomorrow looks a little bit more promising, and but the weather looks fine. Good sunny conditions and reasonable temperatures. Have a good day out there.